I was a little nervous because I thought I was standing between you and lunch, but I find out it's governance and risk. So we're in a better state already. What I'm going to cover is it's been kind of a journey at AIG, and obviously over the last couple of years, AIG has gone through a couple of challenges. So really what's happening now inside of operations and systems within AIG is a more focused approach to how do we actually get more structure around how AIG operates. Now, again, AIG prior to, and I can't guarantee this, but prior to maybe 3 years ago, it was probably a group of warring states. Today, we would like to think of it more as a federation of participating countries. And so what we're doing now from an O&S perspective, we'll just jump here, is we're starting to get into some discussions around what does it mean to really improve operations. So a lot of the conversation we had earlier around process management or business process management, some tools and kind of the COE and things like that. What we've decided to do is it's really more important about how AIG is going to operate in the future, right? And it's not just about a corporate view of the world. It's really getting all the business units to kind of get on board, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, but it's really about all the business units starting to really take a look at their operations and really focus on how do we actually construct and design a top-notch operational unit. Now that said, we have a number of business units, we have a number of corporate functions, so the conversation's the same with all of them. We aren't dictating standards yet, but we are having conversations around what's important to the business. So one of the things here, we just want to talk a couple of points. We are in global operations and systems, right? So it's the O and the S, right? And it's not overstock.com, it's actually operations. And typically on a monthly basis when we have the meetings with the business units and that team, the O&S team, we spend a lot of time talking about systems. So I heard a lot of that this morning, right? And typically when we go into companies and we talk to them, it is a lot about the systems and the applications. And we have a huge portfolio of applications, roughly about 6,000 worldwide. So there's a current effort to do some rationalization around that discussion. We also are putting in MDM, and we're trying to get a hold of all the data that we actually manage. But the one area inside of AIG that has really kind of gone not unnoticed and not necessarily unchecked, but I'll say unmanaged in the sense of, do we have a standard set of key performance or key indicators, right? So how well do we know we're doing? Now we can talk about ratios, we can talk about the financial numbers, and Wall Street's pretty clear whether they like them or not, so that's good. But from an operations standpoint, when we go out to the business and talk to folks, and we say, well, how good are you operating? We don't get that conversation. And in fact, not that there's a void, but there's somewhat of a blank stare. So part of the problem that you have with an organization is, well, how do you define operations? So has anybody here defined operations for their organization? So good, because that's typically what happens. And so we're going to use process management as a way to actually start constructing the definition around what operations is at AIG, right? So what we have here in the last 12 months, we've got the operations development team up and running. So this might be akin to the concept of the COE, which is very politically correct, but we're going to stay in the operations world for now. We're also going to talk about the AIG framework. The box on the right-hand side are all the methods and knowledge tools and techniques, process models, change implementation, not change management, but change implementation. These are all the things that we're building out inside of AIG. Now again, we don't necessarily drive change for the business units, but we enable them to take advantage of these. We go and train, we mentor, we do all those things that you heard earlier, but we actually have to start setting some agenda items around these to say, well, here's how we want to start thinking about process management, business process management at AIG. So what's key and what's becoming very apparent at AIG is that words are very important. So we have a lot of words that mean the same thing, and we use a lot of different words to talk about the same thing, right? So when we talk about business process management, we have to put definitions up. We got to use the same terms in every slide that we use, and we can't deviate from the norm because what happens is we throw people off, we throw them under the bus, or off the bus or something like that. So words are becoming more important, hence the framework allows us to kind of get the conversation under control, okay? We talk about the Operations Council. So one of the things that you heard earlier is that what tends to happen and what's a critical success factor for BPM is really your ability to govern the implementations of BPM, right? And so how do I recognize that BPM is actually having an impact on the organization? Well, we started with governance first. So we said, well, wait a second. We have a lot of business units. They're going to go do what they usually do. We need to ensure that they're getting on the same page and we're having the conversations around process management. All good. We get the agenda up and running. But ultimately, we have